Hi, welcome to what I talk about. I'm reviewing another Redwall book, Martin the Warrior by Brian Jacques. As the title tells, this book is about Martin the Warrior, who becomes Redwall's most famous hero, and it goes back in time to tell his story, back before Redwall was built, into a time before the book Mossflower, and basically what it was the true tale of why he came down, wandered down from the north to the Mossflower area, and what really happened up there, compared to what he kind of told them. Didn't really tell him much of where he came from, and so this is kind of his roots of where he comes from and how he becomes a warrior, really. I have to also say, this book also has one of the most epic battles in the whole Redwall series, in my opinion. It's so grand and huge and so much involvement. And the Good Beasts, I think, have one of the largest armies formed in all the Redwall series. This is a massive battle that ends up taking place, and it's really exciting to read. I can tell the author put a lot of thought into this book. I think he just wanted to really tell this warrior story and what happened before everything, even before obviously Mossflower went back in time to the founding Redwall when Martin showed up, and how before they built it and everything, and how that became to be. But like, this is kind of like his founding of everything as a warrior, where he comes from. And I think the author really just wanted to tell it, and you can kind of just see it when you read the book, that he just really just put it out there, and it's so well put together. You may also know this book through the cartoon TV show that was put out a number of years back, made of this book, the whole story. I personally got into reading the Redwall series, reading in general, really started enjoying reading because of the Redwall series, TV series, which was done originally in Redwall and Matameo, and that really got me. I loved it so much, I wanted to know more of the story, and so that got me to start reading the series. And Martin the Warrior, when I was watching it, the TV series, I would have loved it to have been out then, but did not come out until a few years after those two, and so I actually missed it. And so I later on, more recently, was able to watch it, and it's very similar to those. And something to check out. It's a cartoon to check out of them, seeing the book come to life as a cartoon. This book tells of the mouse, Martin the Warrior, and where he comes from. His father had to leave. Luke, who's also a warrior, had to leave on some battle quest that he had to go and do. And so he left. Martin was really young with his sword, with Luke's sword, which he inherited, and he ended up being captured and enslaved in this fort called Marshink. And so he grows up at a very young age, basically as a slave for a long time, and he's just captured and caught there, and grows up in this life until he escapes with some others. And this toll slavery kind of tells this toll slavery kind of puts on a lot of them. The two main bad characters of this book that it tells, the leaders, is Badrang, who is the leader of Marshink, the Fort Marshink, who wants to take over basically the whole north. He wants to conquer it all for himself. And his old mate from when he used to be a corsair on the open seas, who shows up in his ship, Trumming Clog. And he arrives during the story, and he ends up wanting some things from his old matey, and they both want some things from each other, and so they end up kind of having a fight over things, and that's when these main characters escape. Rose and Grum help Martin, Faldo, and Rose's brother Brome escape. And they are all kind of split up at sea. And Martin, Rose, and Grum end up together, whereas Faldo and Brome end up together on their own adventure. Martin, Rose, and Grum end up going on this big epic quest with a map they end up getting. A lot of dangers they end up getting first, and then they get a map that has a riddle to it. They have to figure out their way out through a riddle, which I find happens a lot in Redwall, which it's cool for the reader, but it's interesting how they always have to be given a riddle instead of a direct map somewhere. It makes the trip interesting and how they're figuring out how this is explained in a certain way, and they end up trying to go to Moonvale, a nice peaceful place of plenty. Kind of reminds you of Redwall a little bit, in a bit, even though it's not at all anything exactly. It's not a building like Redwall, but the peacefulness and and plenty way it is this haven to go to. Brom and Faldo end up joining the Rambling Rosehip Players, who is basically a group of performers and entertainers, with Roanoke and Ballo, and as other main characters with them. And they end up having a fight against Marshank, and so basically they all go off in different directions, have different adventures, with the main vocal point being Marshank the Fort, who's trying to enslave the entire country and really is this tyrant that's there. And Martin wants to get his sword back from Badring. Badring is a stout who thinks stouts are basically smarter than any other creature, and because of this, he doesn't have any stouts in his army, and so he is actually pretty smart, and he is a really tough villain who wants to rule everything with an iron fist and be a tyrant and everything. And he's very serious, and he can really hold his own in war and knows what he's doing. Whereas his old matey who shows up, Truman Clog, is kind of the opposite of a character. He is definitely a villain, but in my opinion, he's a very likable villain in this book, and he kind of grows on you. He's a lot of humor. He always just kind of like jokes around, though he is pretty brutal at times. In my opinion, I think you can kind of persuade him in different directions. Even if you're a good creature, you can definitely persuade him to have different outcomes if you could just talk to him, basically, and reason to him with him. Though he is brutal and a murderer and all that, and this brutal leader, Corsair leader, he's just kind of more light, and even all the way to the end, he's just kind of somebody that followed, who's just this light, bad character who's a leader in control of an army and everything, but he ends up being this more, this fun leader in a sense, and thinks one of the hair that he meets as being a magic hair and everything like that. So I think he's one of the most fun characters actually of the book. Ballo is a hare who Truman Clog thinks is basically a magic rabbit, and he's from the performing band group, and he's a performer. He's like a hare in a lot of ways, and usually Redwall is kind of more fun, though he can be serious, and he's a performer. He's a serious performer, as I would say. I would call him, though he's not always serious. And there's the badger, Roanoke, who is the more leader figure of the performing band. This big badger who's able to, she's kind of the power lifter of the group. And she's kind of the one that's kind of understands things and control of that group. Faldo is a squirrel who has lost a lot in his young life as being a slave. His father's enslaved as well, and he's only lived that life. And he's kind of a creature who he wants revenge for what happened, and you kind of really get him. And he's just kind of always trying to fight back and try to have victory over this evil villain, and that really just basically it really makes sense. And his character is kind of somebody just to gets very involved in the story, gets very involved in the conflict. Rose, who is a mouse, gets to really know Martin really well in this book after she helps him escape, and they go on this adventure together, and they come very close. And her brother, Brom, is kind of a little different when it comes to war. He's not as much the fighter in a sense. He doesn't really understand. He comes from a peaceful place, and he doesn't want all this war to happen. and so he has to find his way. Grum is a mole who's very helpful, definitely very helpful in this book, and I think his character is more lighthearted, kind of like a few other ones. And yeah, he's a great companion to have around. And Pelham is a hedgehog who ends up joining Martin, Rose, and Grum on their journey when they come across pygmy shrews. And she's somebody who's struggled a lot because of her, basically, her imprisonment and her whole, situation with the pygmy shrews. And so that's somebody that ends up joining them. This book is a lot about the warrior's code and finding what is right, and kind of like the mental state of a warrior and what they are. And Martin learning this, as well as other warriors learning this as well. And there's also a lot about revenge in there and what should happen in this whole ordeal. This book, and really the whole Redwall series, kind of reminds me of old Great Britain with England, Scotland, and Ireland years and years ago, with the clans and just like the way the fort is, the houses are built. The long houses, and kind of reminds you of when the Vikings kind of attacked a lot. And the ships, a lot of them throughout the series, I find are kind of like Viking ships, like how they used to attack the country. And though I would say there's some instances that are definitely different in time frame, like some of the ships' vessels are definitely more like 16 or 1700 ships. But in general, I would say even most things on land where they live just reminds me of all that old Great Britain. I really think that everyone will enjoy reading this book. It's about love and loss and war and friendships and companions and evil villains and this awesome epic battle, as I said before. And there is the cartoon TV show that it's worth checking out. And the audiobooks, they're always well done with a full cast and the author. And there aren't Redwall feasts in this book, as most Redwall books have, of course, because Redwall wasn't founded yet. Though there is really great food, and their author always brings through with this. And so if you're looking for great, tasty just food, it'll be in this book. I hope you liked this video. If you did enjoy it, please leave a like and subscribe for more videos like these. I plan on doing the whole Redwall series, reviewing all of them, as well as reviewing other books from other series. So please stay around. Thanks for watching.